And now we're all together. 3, 2, 1. Peanut butter, motherfucker ass. Fuck your ass. My mama has a pussy. Tom, you're supposed to sing too.
Unfortunately, I don't know the lyrics quite as well. And with that, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say bad evening, because, well, Philipp's gonna tell you, my name is Thomas.
Yes, and my name is Philip, and today we are talking about one of my favorite movies. It's called Gummo. Gummo was the fourth Marx brother, but he quit the Marx Brothers team because he liked to wear women's clothes and so on. And yes, but Harmony Korine, the famous writer, director, probably musician, also actor, also painter, DJ, uh, I don't know, is like a great admirer of Gummo, so he called his first feature film Gummo. And my brother Tom watched it because I spent my 23rd birthday in the Ukraine in a war zone. And so, to do me a favor, he watched Gummo, which is like the perfect circumstances to watch this movie because it's nearly as random as the movie itself. So, Tom, okay, maybe we should explain what Gummo is about. Tom.
Yes, Gummo is about absolutely nothing. It's I mean, that's maybe a bit unfair. It's about this little town where a tornado destroyed like everything a couple of years or decades ago, whatever. And then we see some of the people that live there, especially two young kids, are just going by their day, and their job is to like kill cats and sell it to some guy. And yeah, that's the entire movie.
Yes, they sell dead cats to a Chinese guy because this Chinese guy has like, I don't know, a food market or something, and because he's Chinese, obviously he sells dead cats as food. And the kids then use this money to buy glue to get high on, and also to buy a prostitute with Down syndrome in one of my favorite scenes in movie history. Yes, Tom, how did you like the film?
I didn't really like it at all for basically the reasons I already stated, that nothing really happens. And it's also, Harmony Korine, you described him as like this artist, painter, actor. To me, I don't know, have you heard of that internet theory that like 90% of the internet is actually just robots like writing to each other, and so there's little to no human interaction actually happening? Well, I have the Harmony Korine Reddit theory that 90% of edgy Reddit posts are just Harmony Korine writing to himself.
Um, yes, I mean, I was honestly very baffled when you told me that you didn't like this movie because we watched, or you watched for the German version of the podcast, the Spring Breakers, didn't like it. Then you watched the Harmony Korine short film called Curb, Curb Dancing. I don't know, where Harmony Korine is like dancing around in like a pink dress with a hat for like 1 minute or something, and and yes, and that's pretty much your whole exposure to Corinne, I think, including his appearance in the boiler room, which is like I don't know, like a disco. I have no idea really where he was like a DJ or something, which I found also amazing. And yes, I can understand why you don't like Spring Breakers or this short film or his activity as a DJ, but Gummo is like an acclaimed masterpiece. It was always in the BFI top 500 list and so on. I mean, now it's gone. But yeah, it should be in there definitely, and I think it's definitely one of the great masterpieces of film history. I mean this sincerely. This is for me, if I would have to give it like stars on Letterbox, I would give it 5 out of 5 because it's just a beautiful film, and the entire shtick of it, what's so revolutionary about it, is that Harmony's idea was basically to make a movie that entirely is made out of only the interesting scenes and character moments. And in a normal movie, so to speak, you would have like, some story, and then inside of the story are interesting scenes. Some of them are interesting, some of them are just there to drive the story along, like some piece of bad exposition dialogue and so on. And so Harmony's plan was, as far as I understand it, just to cut out all the unnecessary or uninteresting stuff, fuck the story, and just stay with pure cinema, with like the pure expressions of the medium of film. And this is what you have, and I think pretty much every scene of this movie is fucking amazing, and the entire movie is just an assemblage of, I have to say, somewhat random scenes, which is all, of course, thematically linked through a tornado, because it all plays in a small town that was struck by a tornado. So the images that you are seeing are thrown together in a way that you would that fits thematically with the town and the space, and also the human faces and also souls, to speak about this poetically, that you are encountering in this movie. And yes, I also think that it's a deeply humanistic film, because there are pretty much no sympathetic characters in a classical sense, but even though all of those characters are what you would call white trash, or one of them is a black trash dwarf, a black trash dwarf from, I don't know, but whatever. Still, all of those characters, Harmony like films them with I don't know, such a curiosity, and there's no judgment in his camera work. And he also plays a small part in the film in a beautiful scene where he is sitting on the couch with the black dwarf and is like drinking beer and is talking about how his mother went into menopause, or I don't know, and then she had a beard or something, and then he like asks the dwarf if he wants to have sex with him, and then they hug. It's so beautiful. And then Harmony cuts immediately to a very grainy, like 8mm shot of a guy playing an electric guitar and screaming like a madman. It's so great. What do you not like about it?
Okay, I have a lot you just threw at me that I want to respond to. First of all, I have to admit, even though I didn't really care for Korine's other films I saw before Gummo, watching Gummo actually, I think, made me appreciate Spring Breakers a bit more, and the stupid short film as well. So, yeah, I guess that's a positive of watching Gummo. But that's so baffling to me that you said he wanted to cut out all the uninteresting parts and just show the interesting stuff, when first of all, mostly the story of a film is the interesting part, at least to an extent, if it's a good story. So just cutting story out immediately is like saying, oh, it's difficult to write a good story. Well, I just won't write one at all, then no one can criticize me, ha ha ha. At least that's how it seems. And also, calling this revolutionary, I think, is very generous. If you think about films like, what's it called by Antonioni, Blow Out, one of the two.
Yeah, Blow Up. I think isn't Blow Out the one by De Palma?
Yeah, I always get those two mixed up.
Which is also fantastic. Have you seen it, the De Palma one?
No, unfortunately not.
It's great. It's a masterpiece. You should watch it.
Yes, I know. But the Antonioni one is also a film where nothing really happens. I mean, there's something like a story, but it's very much not the focus of the majority of the film. Uh, and I really, really like that film. I think it's masterfully made. And if you're talking about films where like there is no story or the story is not the focus at least, then I would go to this film as an example of how to do it right. Whereas in Gummo, it is really just, yes, random scenes, but also a lot of the scenes are really uninteresting. I mean, if you take the art house filter off, if you take off the shit tainted glasses, so to speak, then what do you have left? You have two kids going about the day and going to work and coming back and talking, and I don't know, it's like totally normal behavior, just that they are a normal job is switched out with killing cats, and I don't know, a normal conversation or chilling at home is switched out with snuffing glue or whatever. I mean, if you look at what they're actually doing, it's not interesting at all. It's like, I don't know, I can't see where it's interesting. And also, when we talked privately about this film, because you were already really agitated that I didn't like it, you always emphasized how beautiful you think this film is. And obviously, beauty is like the most subjective thing ever, basically. So I can't tell you that it's not beautiful. I just can tell you that I don't find it particularly beautiful.
Don't you think the scene is beautiful where this small child is like buying a illegal prostitute with Down syndrome, and then he gets into the room, and they're just sitting on the bed, and she's reading like his future's fortune out of his hand, and they're just sitting there, and she's telling him that one day he will be a millionaire. And yes, and then Harmony just cuts away. So that's what I think is so humanistic about this film, because we are in this, in a sense, deeply disturbing place, and I don't see. I mean, the behavior might be normal to the characters in the film because that's just their environment, but I have absolutely no clue and cannot even begin to imagine how the heck you think anything they are doing is normal. It's not normal if your childhood entirely consists of killing cats, selling them to a Chinese guy, sniffing glue, buying illegal prostitutes, riding around on your bike, fantasizing about running amok. I think this other guy, yeah, is also the two of those kids. They have completely insane lives, and I think it. Yes, what's so touching about it is, as I've said, that Harmony is like introducing those very disturbing situations that are never overblown. So it's never like a irreversible, you see some completely shocking, violent outbursts. It's just, as you've said, it's just their sort of strange offbeat reality. And that is what's so beautiful. I mean, would you really like to see some incredibly disturbing or violent scene in this movie? It's clearly not about this. This movie does not try to be shocking. It's exactly the opposite. It tries to show you the beauty in situations and characters that you would find on the surface shocking or disgusting or disturbing or something like that. It's a deeply humanistic point of view that this film has. And so, yes, I think that's what's beautiful. I don't even think that it's that I mean, okay, you could say that it's subjectivistic, but it's definitely humanistic, and that's an objective fact.
I don't know. I mean, first of all, you're always talking about how this prostitute has Down syndrome. Is this ever mentioned in the film? Because it didn't really occur to me when I watched it, to be honest. I mean, maybe I'm a bit naive, or maybe you're reading too much into it. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, I mean, I don't hate this film. Like, it's not the worst film ever made or anything like that. There are certain good scenes in it. I mean, I like to give the example of the scene where the two kids break into a house wearing dumb rubber masks, and they find the grandmother of one of the other kids in the village, and she's hooked up to like some machinery that keeps her alive, and they look at her and like shoot her foot with one of those air pressure guns. And then they're talking about how she's like basically already dead, so they just pull the plug and kill her basically. Or is it killing her if she's already like in that state? Yeah, I really like that one scene, and I also kind of like the prostitute scene. Yeah, that's another standout one for sure. But I don't know, the rest of the film basically feels like filler. I mean, every other character we see them for 3 minutes. They get their one scene, and that's it. I mean, yeah, it just feels random, disjointed, and like nothing I'm watching has any impact at all on anything else I'm watching. I don't know.
No, I totally disagree. I mean, it fits perfectly thematically, and that's the difference to a movie like Blow Up by Antonioni, which is like basically a purely intellectual exercise. And again, this movie is not intellectual at all. It's like purely based on, yes, on this humanistic perspective. For example, there's like a very short and for you, I'm sure, very random scene with like an albino woman and she's like dancing around in front of a car, and she's talking about what kind of man she would like to marry or something, or have a relationship with. And yes, it's basically just this video that's probably for her to promote herself as a lover or as a fiance or something like that. It's really as if the movie wants to promote this woman so that she can find a husband. It's absolutely insane to just put it into a movie. But again, this is, and wouldn't you agree that that's absolutely revolutionary to say the movie is not there for the audience, is also not there for the director, but it's there for this random woman, which is not an actress, which is probably just a person that Harmony met and found nice. And so he said, hey, you're searching for like a boyfriend? All right, just say it and I'll put it in the movie. I don't care about anything else. Isn't that a truly revolutionary? And also, yes, I'm sorry to be so sentimental about it, but isn't that a beautiful thing to do? I don't know. It's just so touching that he just fucks everything else and just purely uses cinema to serve those people that he obviously I don't know, enjoys to some extent. Why is this not interesting to you?
It's not interesting to me because it's the natural conclusion of when cameras get more affordable and everyone can have a camera. I mean, just basically really look on YouTube, maybe if it was a bit looser with the censorship and so on, and you'll find probably every single scene of Gummo in one form or another. It's just giving random people cameras and letting them film whatever they want. And I mean, there can be, of course, merit to that. I just don't know why I would ever watch that again as a feature film.
No, because it's you see, normally such a video would not contain that, for example, this woman was born with like I don't know, not enough toe on her feet. And so she's telling that in this promotion video for herself that she had to learn how to pick up things with her feet because it was more difficult for her than for other people because she was born with this like birth defect and so on. So we get such interesting, strange and surreal looks into the lives of those people, and it's like totally unfiltered. That's what I love really so much about it. I mean, this movie had probably a budget of like 1.3, $1.5 million. And it's just like there are no constraints at it at all. Like it's just this pure stream of consciousness from Korine. It's really like the last chapter of like Ulysses by James Joyce. And Korine said in an interview that that was his main inspiration for this movie. To be more precise, he watched like a theater adaptation of that novel, Ulysses, and the main character was played by Snoop Dogg. And so that inspired him to make this film. But it all makes perfect sense. And again, it is this mixture of like high art and video that some kids made for fun. And that perfectly represents what I wanted to achieve with cinema in so many ways. And yes, I can't but I don't know, adore it. And yeah, I just want to say a few other things about the way this movie was actually made, because they were actually filming in those kind of fucked up homes that you are seeing in the movie, which are like full of, I don't know, dirt, I guess. And Corinne said Corinne said that at some point everyone who was like part of the crew only wanted to go into these houses with like a nuclear disaster outfits, like how is it called? Those suits that people are wearing if like a nuclear explosion has taken place. And he and the cameraman, I don't know, to provoke the other crew members, just directed in like flip-flops and like speedos, and they were basically half naked in the houses and directed the movie. um, yeah, I also, a little bit of trivia, the famous Austrian filmmaker Amro El was actually inspired to work out because of this movie.
Was it because of the scene where the kid is like in front of the mirror and his mom like step dances in the background?
You know what? I would like to say that it was because of the scene where the two Jehovah's Witnesses brothers are like training and working out. But no, it's because of the child, of course. So there's this fantastic scene where this little child is like going into the basement, and he has like spoons and forks for like as weights, yes. And he's like standing in front of the mirror without a shirt on. By the way, costume designed by Chloe Sevigny. Great job. Everyone just gets a jeans and that's it. And yes, he's standing in front of this mirror listening to this song by Madonna, Like a Prayer. And yes, he's standing there and he's like working out with a bunch of spoons. And the song is like singing, "Life is a mystery, everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name." And in this moment, his mother comes down into the basement and is like trying to talk with him. And then she like puts a gun to his head and says, "If you don't smile, I'm going to kill you. I have killed before and I will kill again." And yes, just another beautiful scene that's at the same time completely surreal, completely crazy and out of this world, but never unrealistic. I mean, you could imagine such a moment occurring in real life. And again, real life most often is more strange than fiction, but not in this movie. This movie really hits the sweet spot and includes every strange scene that could occur in the life of a human being. So it's completely surreal and absurd, but it's never unrealistic, I would say. And again, I cannot see how you don't find those scenes interesting. I mean, is there tell me one more interesting scene where a mother is trying to reconnect with her son?
I mean, now you're putting me on the spot. I don't know that many scenes where a mother is trying to reconnect with her son.
Yes, but it's happening all the fucking time. You see it in every drama, in every comedy, you see a scene like this, but never anything like this at all. And still, the scene is not unrealistic. That's so hard to pull off, and you just have to give it credit.
No, I fucking don't. What? Also, I don't know what you find surreal about this film. That's a word you've thrown around a lot now. So,
For example, there are three children on a junkyard. One of them is dressed up like with pink bunny ears and is otherwise half naked, and the other two children are dressed up as fucking cowboys, and they're just standing there on a junkyard. They don't know each other even, and the two cowboys just say, "This rabbit looks fucking queer." Queer fucking rabbit, and then they pull out their toy guns and just start shooting at the rabbit. And obviously, those are toys. And the rabbit kid doesn't know those cowboy kids, as far as we know. But the rabbit just plays like he's dying. And he just falls over and stays in the role as a dead rabbit. And the two other children who are dressed up as cowboys then touch his body and search him for money, which they don't find. And then they go away, and the bunny just lies there still. And it's like this beautiful little, but totally, you would have to agree that this is totally surreal and absurd. But it is this, I don't know, this strange scene where you can now have a gigantic discourse about what it means to be an actor or what acting means in everyday situations. But again, it has a lot of like intellectual implications, but at the same time, it's just like totally stream of consciousness and surrealism. I mean, surrealism comes from the subconscious. Don't you think that those are the ideas, many of those ideas are like coming from Harmony Korine's subconscious, where he isn't really thinking about it, but those are just images that occur in his head and he's just putting them on film because that's what would be called surrealism. Don't you agree that that's pretty surreal, what you're seeing there? Also, I would have to say, Korine just found those two cowboy kids and he, I don't know, just met them randomly in a McDonald's, probably something like that, and they were just like, cursing around, like saying "motherfucker," blah, blah, blah. And then uh, he wanted to have them in his movie immediately, and then he went to their dad and asked, "Hey, can your children be in my movie?" And the dad said, "I don't fucking care what you do with those little fuckers." And Harmony then said, "In this moment, I knew that the movie would be great." But it's really something that I and Amro El Tatawi coined as a Werner Herzog moment. A Werner Herzog moment is like the moment when Werner Herzog was shooting Aguirre, the Wrath of God, and he was just arriving at the top of this mountain for the opening shot. And there was fog everywhere. But at the moment he arrived at the top and made the camera ready to shoot, suddenly all the fog disappeared and he could shoot the scene. And in this moment, Werner Herzog knew that the movie was going to be great. And that's what's called a Werner Herzog moment. And this was Harmony Korine's Werner Herzog moment for Gummo.
If the condition is that the movie has to turn out great, then I guess Harmony Korine's wasn't a Herzog moment after all.
It was a Korine moment.
It was a Korine moment, like he knew the movie would turn out like it turned out, I guess. But coming back to the surreal thing, I mean, when there are two kids that like draw their toy guns on you, I'm pretty sure like most people would play along. Maybe not in the exact same way, but like doing the whole "oh, they are shooting me" blah 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 thing. That's really not that weird. If this other kid didn't just happen to wear those bunny ears and like laid on the ground for a bit longer than what would be usual.
So you don't think that this scene could occur like that in a Louis Buñuel film without being out of place? I mean, obviously Buñuel would shoot it in a different way, but I know movies by Buñuel that are not more surreal than that, definitely.
I mean, just because a scene could be in a Buñuel movie doesn't necessarily mean that it's surreal. I mean, yeah, I guess it could happen, but again, it could also just happen in real life. I don't think that's so far fetched.
Yes, again, that's what I find so interesting. It's definitely not classical surrealism. I mean, this is not a like Buñuel or Dali ripoff or anything like that. It's a mixture out of surrealism and realism, and or maybe you shouldn't even call it realism. Maybe it's yeah, heightened realism, poetic realism, something like that. But again, that's why it's so revolutionary, really, because it has many aspects out of those different. Yeah, styles or art movements, and it combines all of them so seamless. I mean, this movie is half a documentary, it's half of a fever dream, it's a promotional video for an albino woman, it's a music video, it's, yes, it's like a visual, audio visual poem, like a movie by Jonas Mekas. It combines so many things, and again, you can say that it's random, and I would agree that it is really random in a narrative sense, but stylistically and thematically, it makes a lot of sense, I would say. I mean, all of the stories have a through line, and all of them have one thing in common, and that's just a love for humanity and the strange and odd things that occur in everyday life with those human beings, which are out of the ordinary, but still worth acknowledging. For example, I love one very tiny moment in the movie where the camera is like panning through a bowling alley, or however you want to call it. I don't, yeah. And there's like a deaf couple. They can't hear each other, so they are screaming at one another incredibly loud, like okay, so they are like, I don't know, maybe they are retarded, I don't know. But the camera is just moving towards them, panning towards them, and then the camera is just going to the right, and they are just not even the point of the scene. They are just in there, and you think, oh my god, this next movie is about this deaf couple, right? But it's not. They are just as normal as everyone else, or as abnormal as everyone else. It's like in the film by Michael Snow, Wavelength, where the entire point of the film is this one 35-minute long zoom through a room, and while the camera is zooming through the room, someone gets into the room and dies, but the camera just zooms away from it. And that's to emphasize the point that it's not about the death scene, but it's all about the zoom of the camera. And the same principle is there in Gummo. So we see this deaf couple and you think, another pair of freaks that Harmony wants to show us. But it's not like that at all. They are just as normal as everyone else. And he demonstrates this just by the camera work. It is magnificent, Tom. Again, you are wrong.
But that's not quite true, because the camera pans to another set of characters and they are talking about the deaf couple. They're like, oh, why are they talking so weird? Because they're deaf, blah blah blah. So he of course puts the focus on them, and that's really, I don't want to make this argument, but if I'm playing devil's advocate, you could very well say that Harmony Korine is like exploiting those people for morbid curiosity, and not so much for the love of humanity, as you said. I mean, he's casting like a lot of kids that obviously don't really know what they're doing. He shows them as being like ridiculous or dumb or just bad people, makes them do all kinds of awkward stuff. You could easily make the argument that that's exploitative.
Yes, you could, but it wouldn't be a sound argument, though, at the end, because there are a few things speaking against it. First of all, that Harmony Korine plays one of those characters himself, and he is not above making out with like a dwarf. And I would argue that Harmony Korine is probably the most ridiculous and yes, the most ridiculous character in this movie. I mean, that could be an actual an argument, but I don't know. It's so strange that at the end of this movie, I actually like every single character except the one dad who, I don't know, raped his daughter. That's like the only person in this entire movie that I actually dislike. Everyone else I like, or I just don't have an opinion on them. But the characters that get fleshed out, I don't know. I actually enjoy pretty much all of them. They are just, again, they are interesting. For example, really fast, there's like one story in this movie, because this movie is full of stories. It's just not one story. But this movie is totally in love with stories. And so you're just seeing a picture of some ugly guy with glasses. And the voiceover says there was this one guy and he was like legasthenic, so he couldn't read and so on, but he was also cross-eyed. So at the end, everything worked out for him. And that's it. And it's like a character in the movie. And you hear his story. And it's immediately, it burns itself into your head because it's like a absurd joke. But I remember it still. This is one, you know, there are a lot of characters in Inception that I don't remember, that get like, okay, who is like the best friend or assistant of Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception? Like, what's his character? What's his motivation? I'm sure that you don't know and I don't know, but you remember this character from Gummo, that where you just see a fucking photograph for 30 seconds and you still remember it.
Okay, then tell me what this guy's motivation was.
I don't know his motivation, but I know this interesting fact about him. Again, it's this love for stories, human interactions, and situations.
You really have a very forgiving definition of what a story is. I mean, saying that, pointing out two traits of a person's psychology and physiology counts as a story is, I don't know, that's a bit of a stretch.
What's the shortest short story?
Probably something like just he went there or something.
No, because that's really not a story. The one with the cross-eyed legasthenic, that's a story. He went there is not a story, but famously, the shortest short story was like obviously written by Ernest Hemingway. It just goes like this: for sale, baby shoes never worn. And there's actually a story in there. And now we can discuss what this means. Did a baby die, or what exactly is going on here? We can already interpret this short story hermeneutically and so on. And it's the same thing with the cross-eyed legasthenic. I mean, it's, yeah, again, but I cannot change your mind about this movie, definitely, because in the end, this movie really comes down to poetry and an understanding of rhythm and tone and themes and so on. And I don't know, if you don't get it, I guess you really don't get it, but it's a beautiful symphony. And the tornado itself is like a symphony that's like mashing up all of those images and stories and human beings.
I mean, okay, like you've also said it a couple of times, either privately or probably even in this episode, and I think that's such a cop-out to say, oh yeah, we can do all this random shit because we say that a tornado went through the city, so tornado and chaos, so we can make this film chaotic. That's such a cheap device to somewhat what's the word, excuse all the bullshit you can put in this film. I mean, maybe I really don't get it, but I don't know. To me, this film gives me next to nothing.
Yeah, I think you really don't get it. Yes, that's such a pity, because it's such a great movie, and I could talk a long time about how many great scenes there are in. For example, the child eating spaghettis in the bathtub, and if you've looked closely in the background on the wall, there's a piece of bacon taped on the wall. Have you noticed?
Yes, because you told me so.
Yes, and in an interview, Harmony said that taped bacon is his aesthetic, and that taped bacon is just something that he gets really excited about. He also said in an interview when he was asked after he published his first book, A Crack Up at the Race Riots, where like the Jews are hiding in trees and the whites are led by Vanilla Ice. He's like the leader of the white people, of the white race. And then he was asked by David Letterman what he prefers more, writing or directing. And you know what his answer was?
No.
Yeah, I like writing and directing. He is such a genius. Okay, what else is there to say about it, Tom? Do you have anything more to say? I mean, I have to say that, oh my god, I could go on for hours. No, I think it's enough.
So, final statements. You called this film high art. I would say it's maybe high art.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good actually. I like that one, Tom. Yes, it's definitely both. And it has one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Wouldn't you agree with that?
It's like the only redeeming quality, basically.
So you do agree with it?
I don't know if I would call it one of the greatest of all time, but it's a pretty good soundtrack, yeah.
But tracks doesn't mean music. You know, soundtracks are music that already existed before and then assembled together. Give me 3 movies that have definitely a better soundtrack than that.
I mean, soundtrack doesn't necessarily mean pre-existing music, does it? I mean, of course, I know what you mean, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have every movie's soundtrack off the top of my head.
I mean, Tarantino movies always have great soundtracks, but other than that, really, I don't know any movie where I would actually enjoy listening to the entire soundtrack because the selection of music is so fucking interesting. You get from children singing Peanut Butter Motherfucker to a song by Madonna, and it's like nothing, and it's jarring in a sense, but it again stylistically makes perfect sense. I don't know how you can enjoy that, you fucking peanut butter. Okay.